They say old houses remember everything. The laughter that once filled their halls, the secrets whispered in the dark corners, and the footsteps that never quite fade, even long after the people are gone. My name is Melissa Harrington, and this is the story of how my family fell apart. Not with a crash, but with a whisper. How greed crept into our lives like a slow poison, and how my stepbrother, the man I once called family, nearly destroyed everything my grandfather built. But before you judge him, or me, or any of us, you should know that money changes people, even the ones who swear it never will. I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, in a house that looked like it came straight out of an old Southern painting. White pillars, iron gates, and magnolia trees that seemed to bloom just for us. My grandfather, Henry Harrington, built that estate brick by brick after returning from the war. People said he had the kind of luck only God could give. But Grandpa used to say, "Luck is just the reward for those who know where to dig." Back then, I didn't understand what he meant. Now I do. Our family was what you'd call old money. Not the flashy kind, no fancy Lamborghinis or champagne parties, but the quiet kind that spoke through polished silverware, custom-tailored suits, and generations of unspoken pride. We were the Harringtons of Riverbend Estate, a name that used to mean something around here. But families like ours have cracks. Tiny ones invisible at first, until something, or someone, forces them wide open. There was my father, Charles Harrington, a man of strict rules and old traditions. He inherited not just the estate, but Grandpa's stubborn pride. He believed loyalty to family was sacred, but he also believed control was love. My mother, Elaine, was gentler, soft-spoken, elegant, always trying to smooth the tension that came with living in a house full of ghosts and expectations. She used to play the piano on Sunday mornings, filling the air with the kind of peace only she could bring. And then, there was Ethan, my stepbrother. He came into our lives when I was 16, after my father remarried. His mother, Victoria, was stunning, graceful, and, how do I say this politely, calculating. She had a smile that could melt a man's heart and eyes that could see straight into your wallet. Ethan was nothing like me. While I buried myself in books, he was all charm and confidence. He knew how to make people like him, and he used it like a weapon. I wanted to believe we could be family. I wanted to believe his smile was real. But from the moment he stepped into that house, something changed. Grandpa always said people show their true selves when inheritance is near. I didn't think much of it until the day we buried him. It was late spring. The air was thick with rain and jasmine. We stood beneath the old oak tree where generations of Harringtons had been laid to rest. Grandpa's coffin was simple, by choice. He never liked extravagance, even though he could afford it. I remember staring at the engraved plate that read, Henry Samuel Harrington, 1927-2016. A builder of dreams, a keeper of secrets. Those words haunted me later. Because Grandpa did keep secrets. Big ones. After the funeral, the house felt different. Like the walls were listening. Like Grandpa had left behind more than just memories. That night, Father called a family meeting in the study. He sat at Grandpa's old mahogany desk, the one with the brass handles worn smooth from decades of use. We all gathered, me, Mother, Victoria, and Ethan. Father's voice was calm, but there was tension behind it. He said the lawyers would read the will in a week. But before that, he wanted to make one thing clear. The estate stays in the family. No one sells. No one leaves. We keep this land as your grandfather intended. Ethan smiled. That easy, practiced smile. Of course, Mr. Harrington. We're all family now, right? But something in his tone made my stomach turn. It was too smooth. Too confident. Like he already knew something we didn't. If I had known what he was planning, if I had known what my grandfather hid beneath the floorboards of that very room, maybe I could have stopped what came next, but I was blind, too trusting, too eager to believe in family. Over the next few days, the estate filled with whispers. Lawyers, bankers, relatives we hadn't seen in years, everyone wanted a piece of the Harrington legacy. And through it all, Ethan played his part perfectly, charming the staff, comforting my father, even helping my mother with the guests. He was the golden boy, and I was just the quiet one in the corner, the one no one expected much from. But I noticed things. The way Victoria lingered by the study door when Father was on the phone. The way Ethan's smile disappeared when he thought no one was looking. And the way the key to Grandpa's safe, the one hidden in his desk drawer, suddenly went missing. A week later, when the will was finally read, the storm broke, both outside and inside our home. Grandpa had left everything, the land, the house, the family trust, to my grandchildren, Melissa Harrington and Ethan Brooks, to be shared equally. Half. Everything split right down the middle. My father's face went pale. Mother tried to smile, but I could feel her hand trembling next to mine. And Victoria, she smiled like a cat who'd already caught the mouse. From that moment, Ethan wasn't just my stepbrother. He was my rival. And what followed turned our home into a battlefield. I didn't know then that the betrayal had already begun, that while I was grieving, Ethan was making calls, forging deals, preparing papers. He wasn't just after his half. He wanted it all. And in a house full of memories, I was about to lose everything. Everything. Except one thing. The secret my grandfather left hidden for me. Buried where no one would ever think to look. Luck is just the reward for those who know where to dig. I used to think Grandpa meant hard work, but now I know he meant something far more literal. When you live in a house as old as Riverbend, you start to believe it has moods. Some mornings it felt alive. Warm sunlight spilling through the windows, the smell of jasmine and freshly brewed coffee drifting down the hall. But lately it felt tense, like even the walls were holding their breath. After Grandpa's will was read, everything changed. No one said it out loud, but you could feel it. Every smile had weight. Every conversation had a shadow behind it. My father was a man built out of principles and polished manners. He believed everything had to be earned. Even love. He woke every morning at 6, dressed in a perfectly pressed suit, and walked the grounds of Riverbend before breakfast. To him, the estate wasn't just land. It was legacy. It was proof that the Harringtons were still relevant, still superior. I used to watch him from my bedroom window, hands clasped behind his back, face turned toward the rising sun, as if he were making some silent promise to keep everything exactly as it had been for generations. But Father didn't adapt well to change. When Grandpa died, something in him cracked. He became shorter with his words, colder with his tone. He didn't like Ethan, not really. But he tolerated him. For appearances. For peace. And that peace was becoming harder to keep. Mother was everything Father wasn't. Soft where he was sharp. Emotional where he was stern. She was the glue that kept this family from splintering into pieces. Her presence filled the house with calm. The sound of her humming as she watered the garden. Her laughter echoing through the halls when she and I shared tea in the sunroom, but I could tell she was exhausted, worn down by years of keeping the peace. She worried about me constantly, even though I was 25 and capable of handling myself. She used to say, "Mel, this house has seen too much silence. Don't let it swallow you too." I didn't know what she meant until later, when silence became the loudest weapon in our home. And then there was Victoria, my stepmother, the kind of woman Savannah's social clubs whispered about, beautiful, perfectly poised, and dangerously ambitious. She had once been a real estate agent before meeting my father at a charity gala. Their marriage shocked everyone. He was a widowed heir in his late 50s. She was a widow herself, 10 years younger with charm that could stop a room cold. To outsiders, she was grace itself. Elegant, refined, a Southern belle reborn. But behind that sweetness was something colder, something calculating. Victoria was the kind of person who knew everyone's secrets before you even realized you'd told her one. She could ask a question that sounded innocent and yet strip you bare of everything you didn't mean to say. She was also fiercely protective of her son, Ethan, her golden boy. And she made sure everyone in the house knew it. Ethan was 28, 3 years older than me, and everything people adored, tall, handsome, confident. He carried himself like the world owed him attention. The kind of man who could make an entire dinner table laugh while secretly pocketing the silverware. When he first moved into Riverbend, I thought he was harmless, even charming. He helped me with small things like fixing the gate or carrying boxes to the attic. He'd smile and say, "We're family now, Mel. You don't have to do everything alone." But it wasn't long before I saw what lay beneath that charm. He had a hunger in him, for approval, for wealth, for power. He liked winning, and he liked when others lost. His mother had raised him to believe he was destined for more, that the world would bend for him if he just smiled the right way. And to his credit, it often did. Every evening we had dinner together in the formal dining room, all 12 chairs around the long mahogany table, though only 4 of us ever sat there. Father at the head, like a king guarding his throne, mother to his right, quiet and patient. Victoria across from her, perfect posture, napkin folded precisely, and Ethan beside her, always beside her, leaning back with that smug ease, his cufflinks catching the light, and then me, at the far end. The quiet one, the observer. I noticed everything that night. The glances between Victoria and Ethan, the subtle digs when Father talked about the estate, the way Ethan's tone changed when he said our inheritance. "So, Mr. Harrington, what's the plan for Riverbend now that the will's been settled? Maybe divide the management? Half mine, half Melissa's? This isn't a company, Ethan, it's a home. And as long as I'm alive, Riverbend stays one piece." "Oh, Charles, don't be so traditional. Ethan's only asking because he's invested. You should be proud. Invested in what, exactly?" "In the future, Mel. The world's changing. Maybe it's time Riverbend changed with it. The world can change all at once. Riverbend does not. We'll see." That was the first time I heard that tone in his voice, the quiet challenge. Like he was daring my father to stop him. Over the next few weeks, Ethan began slipping into the business side of things, managing small parts of the estate finances, helping with property records, talking to banks about future prospects. My father let him, partly because he didn't want to fight, partly because Victoria had a way of convincing him it was all harmless. But I saw the papers, the calls, the whispers. He was planning something. I just didn't know what. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner, I couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, and the moonlight shimmered on the river behind the estate. I went out for a walk, my footsteps soft on the damp grass. That's when I saw them, Ethan and Victoria, standing by the boathouse, talking in hushed tones. "You have to be patient. Charles will come around if we show him it's for the good of the family. He'll never come around. He's too stuck in the past. We can't wait for him, Mom. And what about Melissa? She's sentimental, Mel. She's harmless. She doesn't even realize what's in front of her." That night, under the silver light of the moon, I made myself a promise. If Ethan thought I was harmless, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Over the next month, the household grew colder. Mother spent more time in her garden, hands trembling as she trimmed the roses. Father buried himself in ledgers, pretending not to notice the tension. Ethan and Victoria hosted dinner parties, inviting people I'd never seen before. Real estate developers, bankers, and city officials. I overheard bits of conversation: expansion, liquidation, trust dissolution. The estate that had stood for 4 generations was quietly being discussed like a business asset. And every time I questioned Ethan, he brushed it off with that same infuriating grin. "Relax, Mel. I'm not trying to sell your precious house. Just exploring options." "Options for what? The future? Ours? Don't worry, you'll thank me later. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. And Ethan was slowly taking it. One signature, one meeting, one charm-filled lie at a time. Still, there was something keeping me sane. Grandpa's old study. It was the only room Ethan hadn't touched. Every time I walked in, I felt him there. the faint scent of tobacco, the creak of the floorboards, the faint ticking of the antique clock on the wall. I'd sit there for hours, reading his old journals. Most of them were about construction, history, or life advice. But one entry from 1994 stood out. If they ever forget the value of what we built, the truth lies where the river bends, where the magnolia meets the stone. I didn't know what it meant then, but later, when everything fell apart, those words became the key to everything Grandpa had hidden. Ethan thought he could take everything from me. But he didn't know about Grandpa's last lesson, the one written not in a will, but in code, and that secret would change everything. Every morning at Riverbend began the same way. The sun would rise over the Savannah River, its light spilling through the lace curtains of my bedroom like liquid gold. You could hear the faint hum of cicadas waking up, the rustle of magnolia leaves in the morning breeze, and the distant call of a riverboat horn echoing from downtown. It was peaceful. Deceptively peaceful. I used to start my mornings on the veranda with a cup of sweet tea, watching the mist drift above the water. Mother always joined me a few minutes later, her silk robe tied perfectly, her hair neatly brushed even at dawn. She'd smile softly, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Your grandfather used to sit here every morning," she'd say. "Right there in that wicker chair. Said he could hear the world breathe before it got too loud." We'd talk about little things. The weather, the new rosebuds, the sound of the church bells from St. Julian's down the road. But beneath those calm conversations, something heavy always lingered, an unspoken worry neither of us wanted to name. Then, from inside the house, we'd hear the sharp, commanding sound of Father's footsteps. He always walked like the floor owed him respect. "Melissa, have you checked the west property line yet? The landscapers trimmed too close to the magnolias last time. We can't have that. I'll see to it, Father." "Good. And have Ethan review the paperwork for the new irrigation system. He's taking on more responsibility now. He needs to learn every inch of this land." "Yes, Father." That was how our mornings went. Polite conversation, hidden tension. Riverbend was alive, not just with people, but with history. Every hallway, every portrait, every creaking floorboard carried a story. The marble staircase had been imported from Italy in 1910. The chandelier in the dining room, a gift from my great-grandfather's first voyage to France. Even the old clock in the foyer, the one that chimed every hour, had survived a hurricane that nearly swallowed the estate decades ago. It wasn't just a home. It was an inheritance of memories, the kind that couldn't be measured in dollars, and yet I could feel it slipping. Like sand through my fingers. Sundays were sacred in our family. Not because of religion, though Father insisted we attend church, but because of tradition. After service, we'd host a lunch on the back lawn under the magnolia trees. The staff would set long white tables, covered with lace runners and crystal pitchers of lemonade. Neighbors and family friends would visit, people with names like Caldwell, Beaumont, and Prescott, all the old Southern families that still clung to their legacies. They'd laugh, gossip, and toast to Southern values, while pretending not to notice the quiet wars simmering beneath the tablecloth. Ethan, of course, was the star of every gathering. He had that effortless charisma, the kind that made people trust him, even when they shouldn't. "Ethan, you simply must tell us about that investment firm of yours. Charles says you're bringing modern ideas into Riverbend. Just trying to keep up with the times, ma'am. Grandpa Harrington built this place on vision. I'm just adding a little innovation to the mix. Innovation doesn't always mean improvement. Some things are better left as they are. Charles, darling, the world's changing. We can honor the past without living in it." "Isn't that right, Ethan? Exactly. Progress and preservation. That's our legacy now. People loved him. They always did. And yet, the more they praised him, the more my father retreated, his pride bruised, his control slipping. I could see it in his eyes, the storm building behind them. But he never said a word. Not yet. At night, Riverbend changed. The air grew thick and heavy, and the house seemed to whisper. I used to wander the halls after everyone went to bed, Just to think. That's when I started noticing things. Documents left out on desks, unfamiliar handwriting in the ledgers, phone calls ending the second I entered a room. One night, I caught Ethan in Grandpa's study again. "You shouldn't be in here." "Relax, Mel. I'm just looking for the property survey. Your father asked me to review it." "Funny. Father keeps that in the cabinet. Locked. You really should learn to trust me more." "We're family, remember? Families don't hide behind locked drawers. Maybe you should stop looking where you don't belong. Some things in this house aren't meant for you." He leaves, brushing past her. The clock ticks loudly in the silence. It was that night I realized something important. Ethan wasn't just meddling. He was searching in for something. And whatever it was, he thought Grandpa had left it behind. Days passed like threads, weaving an illusion of peace. Mother still played the piano every evening, her music echoing down the hall. Soft, nostalgic melodies that made the house feel alive again, if only for a moment. Sometimes Father and I would walk the grounds together. He'd point out the oak trees Grandpa had planted decades ago, or the old servants' quarters now turned into a guest house. This place? It's not just ours, Melissa. It's our duty. The Harrington name stands because we've kept this land untouched, sacred. Promise me you'll protect it. I promise, Father. Good. Then no matter what happens, you'll do what's right. I didn't understand then what he meant by no matter what happens. But I would soon. A few days later, while searching through old storage trunks in the attic, I found something strange. A small wooden box with a rusted lock and the initials HH carved into the top. It was hidden beneath a stack of faded blueprints, sealed in dust. Inside was a folded note, yellowed with age, written in Grandpa's familiar hand. Melissa. If you're reading this, it means you've learned to see beyond the gold. Not everything valuable can be sold. Follow the magnolias where the river bends. You'll know it when you hear it. The note sent a chill through me. What did he mean by hear it? And why hide this in the attic? I slipped the note into my pocket just as I heard footsteps on the stairs. Ethan's voice. "Mel, you up here?" "Yeah, just sorting old junk. You always did like digging into ghosts. Careful. You might find something you don't want to." I knew right then that he was looking for the same thing. Whatever Grandpa hid, he wanted it too. But unlike him, I didn't want it for money. I wanted the truth. Life at Riverbend continued, outwardly serene, inwardly crumbling. The air grew thicker with secrets. The laughter at the dinner table sounded forced. And every night I found myself staring at that note, reading the same words again and again. Follow the magnolias where the river bends. I didn't yet know that the magnolias would lead me not only to a buried secret, but to the night my family would finally explode. The calm was over. Riverbend was about to remember everything it had buried. They say storms never come without warning. But in my family, the warnings were always silent, hidden in glances, unfinished sentences, and locked doors. The weeks that followed the discovery of Grandpa's note felt different. The air was charged, like the sky before lightning strikes. Ethan was restless. Victoria whispered more than she spoke. And Father had started locking his study at night. Even the staff moved quietly, avoiding eye contact. Riverbend had become a house full of ghosts, but these ones were still breathing. It started small, a few papers missing from Father's study. Land deeds, property assessments, financial records, all gone. When he noticed, he was furious. He called for me first. "You've been in my study recently?" "No, Father, why?" "Someone's been going through my files. Important documents. Confidential ones. Do you think it's—" "No, I don't think." "I know. Your stepbrother has been asking too many questions about the estate. He thinks I don't notice, but I do. Should we confront him?" "Not yet. Let him think he's being clever. Sometimes the best way to catch a snake is to let it slither out into the open." "Melissa, I need you to be careful." "Don't trust him." "Not for a second." I nodded, but part of me hesitated. Was it possible Ethan was really trying to steal the estate? It seemed unthinkable. But so was everything else that was starting to happen. That same night, I couldn't sleep. The wind howled against the windows, and the river outside looked like liquid glass beneath the moonlight. I wandered downstairs, past the dimly lit foyer, and froze when I heard voices coming from the library. It was Ethan, and someone else. A man I didn't recognize. We'll move on it before the quarter ends. He's old-fashioned, stubborn, but once the transfer's signed, there's nothing he can do. And the daughter? She's sentimental, harmless. She doesn't even know half of what's happening under her nose. You're sure this will hold up legally? Trust me. My mother's handling the paperwork with her lawyer. By the time they realize Riverbend will already have a new deed holder. Me, smart kid. You'll be rich before 30. Rich isn't enough. I want to be untouchable. My stepbrother wasn't just greedy. He was orchestrating a takeover. And he was using my father's trust, and my grandfather's name, to do it. The next morning, I called the family lawyer, Mr. Dalton, an old friend of Grandpa's. He'd known me since childhood, and his gravelly voice carried both warmth and worry. Melissa, slow down. What exactly are you saying? I think Ethan and Victoria are trying to transfer ownership of the estate, without father's consent. I heard him talking to someone about a deed transfer. That's impossible unless your father signs off. Unless what? Unless he's being misled or coerced. Charles trusts Victoria, doesn't he? Too much. I'll start looking into it. But Melissa, be careful. People who steal legacies don't stop at lies. That night, dinner was tense, even by Harrington standards. Victoria poured wine, smiling that perfect glossy smile, while Ethan scrolled through his phone like the king of the table. Father barely ate. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his glass. Charles, darling, you've been so quiet lately. Everything all right at the firm? Just tired. You work too hard, sir. Maybe it's time you let someone else take some of that burden. And I suppose you're volunteering? Well, I am family. Funny thing about family, it's supposed to mean loyalty. Not leverage easy, Mel. You sound almost paranoid. Maybe that's because I'm starting to notice things. Like missing documents, strange visitors, late-night calls. Melissa, darling, you've always had such an active imagination. Perhaps you should get some rest. Maybe I will, right after I speak with the family lawyer. Enough. Not at the dinner table. I could feel their eyes on me as I followed him out. Ethan's gaze, dark, calculating. Victoria's sharp as glass. That was the night I realized something chilling. They weren't afraid of getting caught. They were afraid of me. The next evening, a real storm rolled in. Thunder shaking the windows, rain hammering the magnolia leaves outside. Father called me into his study again. He looked pale, older. His hands trembled slightly as he held a letter. I've been a fool, Melissa. What happened? It was a notice of transfer of property title, filed with the county registrar. The owner's signature at the bottom read, Charles Henry Harrington, Father, this is your signature. But I didn't sign this. Victoria brought me some papers last week, said they were trust renewals. I didn't read them closely enough. She tricked me, Melissa. They forged my consent. We can stop this. We can go to the police, not yet. If we accuse them without proof, they'll bury us in lawsuits. We need evidence. Something concrete. Find whatever your grandfather left behind. Henry warned me years ago. Said he hid a document that protects the true heir. I didn't understand then. But maybe that's what he meant. I'll find it. I swear I will. Be careful. They won't let you walk away if they find out you know. That night, I searched Grandpa's study again, pulling drawers, checking behind bookshelves, tapping walls for hollow sounds. Nothing. Then, I remembered his note. Follow the magnolias where the river bends. You'll know it when you hear it. So I went outside. Rain pouring, wind howling, the world swallowed in stormlight. I followed the row of magnolia trees that lined the path toward the boathouse, where the river curved sharply toward the east. That's when I heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping beneath the rain. I followed the sound to the stone bench by the water. Old, cracked, half covered in moss. Beneath it, the soil sounded. Hollow. It was a small tin box, rusted, locked, engraved with the initials HH inside, a stack of letters, a key, and a sealed envelope marked, "For Melissa." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, Grandpa's handwriting, steady, deliberate. If you're reading this, it means the Harrington name has been challenged by blood not of its own. The estate's true deed lies not in county records, but in trust under the name MH, yours. They will come for it, but you must protect it. The key belongs to the old chapel safe. Trust no one. The old chapel. Grandpa hid a second deed, one they didn't know existed. What are you doing out here, Mel? Just remembering Grandpa funny. You were always his favorite. Guess that didn't change even after death, huh? Be careful poking around old ghosts. You might dig up something dangerous. That night, I didn't sleep. Because I knew Ethan was on to me, and whatever Grandpa had hidden, it was the only thing standing between me and losing everything. He took my inheritance, but he wasn't going to take Riverbend. Not while I was still breathing. The morning after the storm was unnervingly calm, the kind of silence that sits on your chest and refuses to move. The magnolias glistened, washed clean by the rain, but I knew what lay beneath that beauty now: buried secrets, rot, and greed. The box I'd found under the stone bench sat hidden under my bed, wrapped in an old quilt. Inside was everything Grandpa had left for me: the letters, the key, and the truth that could destroy Ethan's entire plan. But I didn't know how close he already was to striking first. It happened 2 days later. Victoria called for a family gathering. That phrase alone was enough to make the staff nervous. We all gathered in the Great Hall, the same room that had held generations of Harrington portraits, all of them watching from the walls with painted, "Silent Judgment." Father sat in his armchair, looking weaker than I'd ever seen him. Victoria stood behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. Too lightly, as if she was posing for a photograph. Ethan leaned casually against the fireplace, a folder in his hand and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I thought it was time we discussed the future of Riverbend, for everyone's sake. The future? You mean what's left after you've stolen it? Melissa, please. We're trying to be civil. You might want to hold that attitude, sis. You're about to get some news. As of this morning, the county registrar has approved the title transfer for Riverbend. Effective immediately. I'm the new majority deed holder. That's impossible. I revoked that. You forged his signature, Ethan. That's fraud. Oh, don't be dramatic, darling. Your father signed those papers himself. We have witnesses. Witnesses you paid off, no doubt. Careful what you accuse me of, Mel. Words have power, especially when they're lies. See this? All legal, all mine. Grandpa's precious Riverbend, now under better management. You betrayed me. Charles, don't upset yourself. This was for the best. Ethan knows how to handle the estate. It's time to let the next generation lead, the next generation, or your own greed. You think you're smarter than us, Melissa, but you're just a naive girl clinging to memories and dead men's promises. This house, this name, it's power, and you don't have what it takes to wield it. You'll regret underestimating me. That night, I found Father in his study, sitting in the dark, staring at the empty fireplace. The papers Ethan had flaunted were scattered across his desk. He looked broken. Your grandfather trusted me to protect this place, and I failed. No, Father. You were deceived. By them, I let them into our lives. I thought marrying Victoria would bring peace after your mother's death. But she only brought ruin. Promise me, Melissa, whatever happens, don't let them erase your grandfather's legacy. Those were the last words my father spoke to me that night. By morning, he was gone. A heart attack. That's what the doctor said. But deep down I knew it wasn't his heart that killed him. It was betrayal. The funeral was held in the old chapel near the river, the one Grandpa built decades ago. It felt like the whole of Savannah came to watch the Harringtons bury their patriarch. Victoria played the role of grieving widow perfectly. Black veil, trembling lips, handkerchief pressed against dry eyes. Ethan stood beside her, offering condolences with rehearsed sincerity. I stood apart by the magnolias, gripping Grandpa's letter in my coat pocket. Every word burned in my chest. The key belongs to the old chapel safe. That was where the truth lay, and this was my only chance to find it. After the service, while the guests gathered by the carriages, I slipped back into the chapel. The stained glass glowed faintly with late afternoon light, and the smell of candle wax lingered in the air. Behind the altar was a small storage door, one I'd never noticed before. It creaked open with a rusty groan, revealing a narrow stairway leading down to a crypt-like basement. I followed it, the echo of my steps bouncing off the stone walls, and there it was, an old iron safe embedded into the wall. The letters HH engraved above it. Come on, please. Inside, a sealed envelope, an old deed, and several letters, all marked, Confidential Trust for Melissa Harrington. I tore the envelope open. To my granddaughter. Melissa, Riverbend is legally and irrevocably held under your name in Trust NAR 312, managed through Dalton and Reeves. Any document claiming transfer without your signature is invalid. Protect this truth and it will protect you. It was real. The estate was mine. Legally mine. But before I could even move, I heard the creak of footsteps behind me. So it was you snooping around. You followed me? I told you. You should have stopped digging. It's over, Ethan. I found Grandpa's trust. I know the estate's mine. Do you have any idea how much money is tied up in Riverbend? How many people I promised shares to? You think I'm just going to walk away? You forged documents? You tricked Father. You caused his death. He was weak. He couldn't hold on to power, but I could have made this family something again. Give me the papers, Mel, now. No, you took everything from us, but you'll never take this. In that moment, years of anger, grief, and betrayal collided. We fought like strangers, not siblings. And maybe we always were. Ethan, you think this changes anything? Victoria, she'll finish what I started. Melissa, what have you done? That was the moment it all shattered. The lies, the facades, the masks, gone. Riverbend was soaked in betrayal, and I was standing in the middle of it. But Grandpa's truth was in my hands now. And no one, not even Victoria, could stop what came next. The night Ethan fell changed everything. By morning, Riverbend wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene, a courtroom, and a battlefield all wrapped into one. The paramedics came before dawn. Ethan survived. A concussion, a broken arm, a few cracked ribs, but alive. Alive enough to lie, manipulate, and twist the story before anyone else could speak the truth. By noon, Sheriff Dempsey arrived, a man who'd known our family since I was a child. But his tone wasn't familiar this time. Melissa, I need to ask you to step outside for a minute. Ethan says you pushed him down the chapel stairs. He fell. He attacked me. I was defending myself. That's not what he told the EMTs. He says you were trying to stop him from collecting his property. His property? He forged the deed. My father didn't sign anything. I'm not saying I believe him, Mel, but Victoria's backing his story. Says you've been unstable since your father passed. Unstable? They've got witnesses, a maid, one of the groundskeepers, all saying they heard shouting. Of course they did. They pay everyone here. Look, you know I've always respected your grandfather. I'll buy you some time, but you'd better have proof. Real proof. That's what Grandpa had hidden, and that's what I had now. The trust papers, the legal deed, the letters. But with Victoria's lies spreading like wildfire, I needed more than truth. I needed power. I called Mr. Dalton again, Grandpa's lawyer, the only man I still trusted. He met me at a quiet diner off the old highway far from the estate. This is the real deal. Henry Harrington established a private trust under your name when you were 16. Irrevocable. Ironclad. So Riverbend is legally mine? Yes, but they'll fight it. Victoria will claim fraud, mental incompetence, anything to delay it. And Ethan, well, he's got money now. Investors, lawyers. These are the certified copies of the trust documents. Keep them safe. And Melissa, your grandfather warned me this day might come. He said if the vultures ever circle, You were to use the backup he prepared. Backup? A safety deposit box in his name, still active. You'll need his personal signet ring to open it. The ring? Father wore it when he died. Then it's likely still in the family vault. Be careful, Melissa. They're desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. When I got back to Riverbend, Victoria was waiting on the front steps, dressed in mourning black, her posture immaculate, her expression poisonous. We need to talk. There's nothing left to say. Oh, I think there is. You see, dear, Ethan and I have filed an injunction. You're being charged with aggravated assault and forgery. Forgery? Apparently, you've been creating fake trust documents in your grandfather's name. Terrible, really. The sheriff seemed quite sympathetic. You could go to prison for this. Unless you leave quietly, sign a release, disappear, let Ethan handle Riverbend's affairs. You're bluffing. Try me. That's when I realized this wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was war. That night, I went to the family vault, the small room beneath Father's study where he kept heirlooms, documents, and Grandpa's ring. But when I opened the door, I froze. The vault was on fire. Flames licked through the shelves, devouring old ledgers, letters, photographs, the very history of the Harrington line. I ran inside, coughing, covering my mouth with my sleeve, trying to reach the safe where Father had kept Grandpa's ring. No, someone had torched the past, and there was only one person ruthless enough to do it. Goodbye. Henry, goodbye, secrets. Later that night, as I sat by the riverbank, hands trembling from smoke burns, I heard slow footsteps behind me. It wasn't Victoria this time. It was Ethan, bandaged, pale, but standing. You always did like playing hero, didn't you? You should still be in the hospital. Doctors said I was lucky. Guess God's got a dark sense of humor. She burned the vault, you know. Said it was symbolic. All those years of family pride, gone in smoke. She's planning something bigger, Mel. Selling the property. Moving the money offshore. Why are you telling me this? Because I didn't mean for this to go that far? Dad's death. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. You killed him. No, I didn't. I just wanted control. She pushed it. She forged more than papers, Mel. She forged his will, then helped me stop her. You don't understand. She's got everything. The lawyers, the money, the sheriff. If you want to win, you'll need something that makes the world listen. Then I'll find it. You sound just like Grandpa. The next morning, I sifted through the ashes of the vault until I found the small metal box, blackened but intact. Inside, beneath scorched paper and melted wax, was the signet ring, Grandpa's crest, the engraved HH still visible beneath the soot. I drove straight to Dalton's office. Together, we went to the bank and opened the old safety deposit box. Inside, another letter, a copy of the real will, and a sealed USB drive labeled Riverbend Files. Do not trust anyone. When Dalton plugged it into his computer, we found what Victoria had feared most. Digital scans, bank records, forged documents, email trails connecting her to an offshore account, and a falsified notary service. She forged every signature, every single one. Then we finally have proof. But if she learns we have this, she'll destroy you before the court even meets. We need to time this right. One strike. Public, undeniable, final. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. A fragile, flickering light in the middle of darkness. Grandpa's words echoed again in my mind. The truth will protect you, if you protect it first. Victoria stole my father's peace. Ethan stole my inheritance, but I had something they'd never understand. The truth, and truth, has a way of burning brighter than any fire. They say justice is blind, but in my experience, it only opens its eyes when someone forces it to. That morning, the courthouse felt colder than I remembered. Rows of faces I'd known since childhood stared at me like I was a stranger. Neighbors, bankers, the same people who used to send us Christmas cards. Now they were here for blood, or spectacle. The case was titled Harrington versus Harrington, a name that had once stood for pride and tradition, now reduced to headlines and gossip. We're here to determine the validity of the late Henry Harrington's estate distribution and subsequent accusations of forgery and assault. Victoria sat at the defense table, immaculate as ever. Ethan beside her, pale, arm still in a sling, avoiding my eyes. I could see the guilt in him, faint, buried, but there. Behind me sat Mr. Dalton, calm and composed, his briefcase locked tight with our evidence inside. When the time comes, you'll need to speak clearly, Melissa. Don't let her rattle you. Mrs. Harrington, can you describe your stepdaughter's behavior in the weeks following your husband's death? Unstable. She was grieving, yes, but obsessively so. She refused to let go, claimed the estate was hers. When we tried to organize legal documents, she became violent. And did you witness the incident where Mr. Ethan Harrington was injured? Yes, I was outside the chapel. I heard shouting, then a crash. When I ran in, Ethan was on the stairs and Melissa was standing over him. She said something like, "You'll never take what's mine." Miss Harrington, you'll have your turn to respond. Let her finish. Truth always cracks under its own lies. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Miss Harrington, isn't it true that your father disinherited you before his death? No, it's not true. My father never changed his will. And yet, Mrs. Harrington has official documents stating forged documents created after his death. You claim to have proof of that? Yes, Your Honor. Permission to present newly discovered evidence from Henry Harrington's private trust and verified financial records. Granted. Proceed. These records show that Mrs. Victoria Harrington transferred estate funds into an offshore account under a shell company 3 days after the death of her husband. This was accompanied by falsified signatures, notarized by a notary who died in 2019. Objection: this evidence wasn't disclosed in discovery. It was discovered 2 days ago in a sealed deposit box authorized by Henry Harrington himself. Objection overruled. Continue. Your Honor, the plaintiff's grandfather foresaw this. He left a message, a recording, stored with these files. If you're hearing this, my fears have come true. Victoria, I trusted you once, but greed runs faster than love. And Ethan, my boy, if you're part of this, I pray forgiveness finds you before justice does. Riverbend belongs to Melissa. Always has. She carries what this family forgot. Loyalty. She made me do it. She said it was all for the family, that I'd finally be accepted. I didn't want to hurt anyone. You spineless fool, order. Order in the court. It was like watching an empire collapse in real time. Every lie, every mask, shattering one after another. Mrs. Harrington, do you deny authorizing these transfers? My husband told me to handle the accounts. I merely followed his wishes, and yet, the will submitted by you bears a forged notary seal and a digital timestamp dated 2 weeks after Henry's death. That's not possible. Mrs. Harrington, are you aware that submitting fraudulent documents to this court constitutes a federal offense? I only wanted to protect what was ours. This court will recess while I review this evidence. Bailiff, take Mrs. Harrington into temporary custody pending verification. And just like that, the Queen fell. Victoria Harrington, the woman who'd turned my father's legacy into poison, was led out of the courtroom, her designer heels echoing like a funeral march. After court recessed, Ethan approached me, his face pale, broken. You were right about her. About everything. And you helped her anyway. I thought she loved me like a son. I didn't realize I was just her weapon. I'll testify about the forgeries, the fire, the threats. All of it. Do it for your soul, not for me. I'm sorry, Mel. For your father. For what I became. After reviewing the presented evidence, this court recognizes the original trust and will of Henry Harrington as valid. All assets of Riverbend Estate are hereby restored to Ms. Melissa Harrington. Mrs. Victoria Harrington is remanded into custody pending criminal investigation. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like silence, heavy and raw. Because when justice finally comes, it doesn't heal. It just stops the bleeding. Outside, the sky was gray but brightening. The courthouse steps were lined with reporters, but I didn't stop. I just walked, past the cameras, past the whispers, into the wind that smelled like freedom and old memories. Grandpa once said, "Wealth isn't what you hold. It's what you protect." He was right. Riverbend wasn't about land or money. It was about truth. And now it was mine again. But part of me wondered, was it worth the cost? 6 months have passed since that day in court. 6 months since Victoria's empire of lies crumbled into dust. And 6 months since I came home to Riverbend, not as the girl who once hid in its shadows, but as the woman who now carried its legacy. Sometimes I catch the scent of my father's pipe tobacco in the library, or hear Grandpa's laughter echo faintly from the gardens when the wind passes through the magnolias. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's just the house remembering, too. The estate is alive again. The roof repaired, the gardens restored, the chapel rebuilt, just like Grandpa's will instructed in one of the letters I found. He wanted it to remain open to the town. Every Sunday people come, not for sermons, but to remember the family that once ruled this land with pride and fell with greed. And in that quiet chapel, I learned to forgive. You were right, Grandpa. Truth always finds its way home. A month ago, I visited Victoria. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. You shouldn't have come. Maybe not. But I had to see it. The woman who destroyed my family and nearly destroyed me. Your grandfather hated me from the start. I just wanted to prove I belonged. You can't imagine what it's like to marry into a world that always looks down on you. You're right. I can't. But I do know what it's like to lose everything because someone thought they deserved more than you did. Ethan writes to me. Says he's in therapy. Maybe he'll be better than I was. Maybe we all will. Goodbye, Victoria. A letter arrived from Ethan last week. Mel, I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to know. I've started working with a community fund your grandfather once supported. They help kids who've lost parents. Kids like we were. It doesn't fix what I did, but maybe it's a start. Take care of Riverbend for all of us. Ethan, I don't know if forgiveness ever fully comes, but I know that regret is its own kind of punishment. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. One morning, while sorting through the attic, I found one last sealed envelope hidden inside Grandpa's desk drawer. It was dated 2 weeks before he died. My dearest Melissa, if you're reading this, it means Riverbend has chosen its true heir. This home was never meant to be a crown. It was meant to be a compass, to guide those who live here back to what matters: honor, truth, and love. You will face wolves dressed as family, storms disguised as blessings, and pain that feels endless. But if you stay kind, even when the world is cruel, you'll never truly lose. Riverbend isn't my gift to you, child. You're Riverbend's gift to the world. Grandpa Henry, I'll take care of it, Grandpa. I promise. Sometimes betrayal doesn't destroy you. It reveals who you really are. And sometimes the inheritance we fight over isn't money or land. It's the right to carry a name with pride. I used to think revenge was power. Now I know forgiveness is. Because letting go doesn't mean you forget. It means you finally remember who you were before the pain. The world called it inheritance. But what Grandpa really left me was peace. This was Riverbend. And this was my story.